Hi everyone, my name is Petra Russell and I'm going to be discussing with you Chapter 4, which is titled Experiencing and Expressing Emotion. I think we can all agree that emotions are something that are important and that impact our everyday lives. It's important to understand how to not only identify and manage our emotions, but also how to effectively communicate them with others. Researchers have identified 6 primary emotions that we all experience. They are fear, joy, sadness, disgust, anger, and surprise. Once we are able to understand what emotions are and be able to label them effectively, it's important to understand what are some forces that impact our emotions. The text talks about how personality affects how we experience emotion. If we Our personality can either impact positively, so someone who's extroverted or who is agreeable usually has more tendency to experience negative or positive emotion, and someone who has neuroticism focuses more on negative emotion. Another aspect that impacts our emotions that is talked about in the text is gender, and it talks about how different genders experience different emotions more strongly than others, and but then it also talks about how we all experience all the emotions and we all experience them to the same intensity, which makes me want to pause for a moment and think and pose a question, which is, do different genders really experience certain emotions more frequently, or does society dictate that it is more socially acceptable for females to experience certain emotions and express certain emotions, and males to express certain emotions? So I think that's something to definitely consider and think about when we're talking about how gender might impact emotion. Once we understand what emotions are and the forces that impact our emotions, it's good to consider how to manage our emotions. Effectively managing emotions is known as emotional intelligence, and there's several different identifiers of someone who has emotional intelligence. First is the ability to correctly identify your own emotions. This is being able to label an experience or a feeling that you're having and say, that is anger or that is sadness. Another is empathy, and that is just being able to understand someone else's emotions and be able to see it from their perspective. Another sign of emotional intelligence is being able to manage your own emotions in a constructive way. I talk with my kids a lot about this, about how it's okay to feel your emotion, but there's certain ways in which it's appropriate to express that. For example, you might be able to express anger appropriately by screaming into a pillow, but probably not punching your sister. And then the final sign of emotional intelligence is just how do you regain control and composure after an emotional state. And for example, with my kids again, I tell them, okay, this made you angry, so how are you going to tell someone how you felt? Or how are you going to talk about your feelings? Or do you need to get help to communicate that? Another important factor in managing your emotions is how do you express them appropriately. A lot of people tend to either suppress their emotions, which is inhibiting your emotion and your response to it, or vent it, which is allowing your emotions to take over. Although there are both positive and negative ways to suppress emotion or vent emotion, the most healthy and effective way to handle difficult emotions is to reappraise them, which is shifting how you think about the meaning of an emotional situation so that the impact is different. I do this a lot with my anxiety. It's for example, if I start to feel an anxiety attack coming on, I try to reframe my emotions by saying, "You're safe. This is going to work out," and try and create a different emotional response to the situation. There are several common emotional challenges that we can occur, and there's two I really want to spend a moment talking about because I think they're misunderstood often. The first is anger, and I think that anger oftentimes, the book talks about it being a primary emotion, but I tend to think of it as a secondary emotion, and maybe I'm off base, but I think oftentimes we experience anger because there's some kind of underlying feeling that we're not able to express. Perhaps it's, I feel like there's usually a reason behind the anger, and that is actually the primary emotion, whether it's a feeling of failure or a feeling of not being understood, whatever the circumstances. I think there's more to anger than just an expression of emotion. Or a volatile expression of emotion. And the second challenge with emotion is when we encounter grief. Grief is usually profound sadness and involves some kind of loss, whether it's of a person or a situation. I think that we tend to, as a culture, rush grief, and it's important to just sit in our feeling and be able to walk through that, and also learn how to comfort others who are walking through that experience. So I think in conclusion, we can make note that emotions are an important part of who we are. And they give us insight into ourselves and into our environment and into each other. And that learning to understand and communicate our emotions is a very important key to our success in communication. Thank you.